Hello, everyone. So today we're going to talk about Trinidad and Tobago. If you're not familiar with where it is located, it's basically located in the Caribbean here, right down here in between North America and South America. So basically, this little island right here, and it's got so much information about it today. But one of the awesome things is close proximity to the United States. They also speak English, and I can't emphasize that enough when you're traveling, how important it is that the place speaks English if you only speak English. Okay, so we're going to zoom out from Trinidad and Tobago, but basically it's this main island, Trinidad and Tobago, right here, just across from Venezuela. You can see there's kind of a weird little pointy areas here, as well as on the island itself. Has some pretty interesting features. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see basically where that is on a grand map. But basically it's that island right there. And it's quite a bit larger than many of the other smaller islands, and about the size of Puerto Rico or Jamaica. So it is pretty important little place on the map here. So we got quite a lot of maps we're going to go through. Kind of a USGS map, looking at some details here. You can see Port of Spain is kind of on the north side of the island here. And then we're going to look at kind of the road structure of the island. Here's kind of the details, what you can see close to downtown. And kind of look at that map pretty carefully. We're also going to look at the geological map for the region, and then look at some of the population map here. Kind of zoom in and take a look at that. Kind of the mountains in the area to see what's going on the island. It is a kind of a windward island, so a lot of people actually go on the west side of the island here because the wind comes in from this, hurricanes come in from this side. So that's something to think about. Here's another kind of map showing some of the height on the island, topological map. You can see the taller mountains here. And then here's kind of the soil map for the region. We're going to go through that one and look at that one carefully. Another soil map of the region, and you can see I kind of kept Trinidad and Tobago on the same map. But there are these purple dots are kind of the population lines here. And then this is kind of a more detailed population one. Definitely want to take a look at this one carefully. You can kind of see some details on this population map that you can't see on some of the other ones, particularly in these small rural areas of the island. And then the shipping map, because it is an island, it's important to think about the boats and shipping. We might even look at some of the air traffic in the area. Let's just load that up really quick, see if it does load up or not. Hopefully it will load up. Yeah, so you can see not too many flights there right now, but kind of a helicopter airport and two different airports here. Lightning map we're not going to look at too carefully, and then some of the Earth at night. You can see this shows how close it is to Caracas. That's the major city, and you can see that this is all kind of along the coast here, heading out to Trinidad, and actually Trinidad and Tobago being very well lit up relative to even Caracas. So a lot of people have already heard of Caracas, and then they haven't even heard of Port of Spain. And that kind of shows some really busy stuff going on there. And then again, the population map. Here's less detailed. You can see Caracas in the distance here. Definitely more people in Caracas area and on the mainland, but there is quite a lot of people on this island. And you can see some other spots on some other islands as well. And then this is the boating map. You can kind of see some of the depths in the ocean here and how complex it gets in between Trinidad and Tobago. These two islands, there's kind of some coral in there, so it might be a little bit tricky to sail that. And then kind of the steep offshoots off the coast here, as well as kind of the harbor here, looking at that. So we're going to go through all these and kind of diagram them out. Hope you'll enjoy this study. Thanks. So we want to kind of start our study looking at primarily the island itself and kind of the geography. So Trinidad and Tobago basically is these two guys right here. So I'm going to circle them here, and then the main part of the city is right there. It's called Port of Spain, and I'll save this on a link and then post these when I'm done with all the images. But we're basically going to go through all this, which is quite a lot of imagery here. But we're going to start with kind of the satellite imagery maps, just because it is a little bit more interesting to kind of look at that from the satellite imagery perspective. I will be able to see some of the chat and questions, so if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them live. Alright, so let's jump right in here. I'm going to do this with yellow and as well as red, just to see the main points here. And it is kind of hard to circle some of this, but what we're going to do is kind of show the main part of the island here is basically on the north side here, and I'm going to circle that here, and it kind of goes right through there. And then there's kind of a middle part of the island with population here, right? And then there's even a blue part of the island. I'm going to do that in pink, actually, kind of on the south side of the island right here. And then there's a blue side of the island, which is basically the windward side of the island, and the population along this coast here. And then there's even a middle side, and I'll do that in green right in here, so we can kind of see all four, because all five of those areas. And then, of course, Tobago kind of being its own thing right here, but that's primarily on this side of the island right there with the population. So we basically have most of the people living right in here, and then some kind of other areas just south and in the middle. Let's zoom in a little bit and see if we can get even a better picture of what's going on here in Trinidad. And basically you can start to see some of these. I'm going to actually make this a little bit smaller to 10 points so we can get in here on the details. So there's actually kind of a weird little area here. So it's kind of there, right? And I think I even missed this spot here. So if I were to redraw that, it also include this little point right in there as well. And then this middle part that we were kind of looking at is actually quite a different than we thought, right? It actually goes kind of like this. So and some of that is because of floodplainin, and there's maybe even another separate area right through here which actually connects into these other areas, right? And then this south area, I forgot what color we used, I think pink and then blue. So we can try to use pink and blue, same colors here. And then this is a little bit different than how we thought, right? So there's kind of this gap there, and then it kind of goes into population, even on this little slip in right in there. And I think we kind of missed this yellow area right there. And then on the windward side, we kind of have even some of this population right there, right? And then we have some of that going into the inland right into there. So and I would say that this is probably the main green area is probably actually right in here, this guy right there, and then maybe some other population right in there for kind of inland stuff. So let's zoom in their main capital. This is called the Port of Spain, and look at what's going on there. And we're going to kind of red highlight that. So that's actually right here. So if we were to highlight that, it's actually right there. So, and it looks like to me there's a couple other spots that we want to kind of look at in addition to that. We're going to do different colors for that. There's kind of this mountainous area where it goes back through there, and then even kind of goes through here. And then there's other deep mountain area. We'll do this in a darker green. You might not be able to see that too well, but it's not too visible. But let's see, maybe keep it as a light blue or something. But this light blue area, there's another area there. And then there's kind of a big suburban sprawl heading out to here. So let's do that in red too, because it is pretty similar to downtown. And then there's this other south side area that we'll do in yellow, kind of this whole area here. And that pretty much covers most of the Port of Spain and the main downtown areas. You'd fly into here in the Port of Spain in this area. We can try to take a look at that airport in a moment. All right, so, excuse me. So here's one of the most zoomed in maps of Port of Spain. And I want to kind of highlight that in a couple different areas so we can start to see. This is the main downtown area. I just circled there. And we're going to divide that up into like 3 sections. Okay, so we got basically this other area that is also considered pretty downtown. Right connected to there. And even a third, we can kind of do this out to here and do this. So those are the 3 main areas, and then you have these offshoots kind of going back up into the hills, and we'll do that with a bright green so you can see some of that. There's this pocket here that really comes out, and then you can kind of see this kind of goes out to here. And then if we were to zoom up to here, there's this whole area right in here. And then definitely this whole span coming out, particularly along this highway. And we're just going to highlight that in blue. There's this highway here that kind of comes through here. It goes in and out of downtown. That being a major highway that basically is very important to the development here on the Port of Spain. Okay, so here you can kind of see the major highway areas. We'll look at that. So basically Port of Spain being the main junction here, and then kind of another chute going down to San Fernando. And then you can even see this whole backside going to the windward side. So actually probably what's going to happen is San Fernando and the south side of the island is going to start to fill in more, and this is going to still be pretty empty because of the hurricane season that comes through here. Now here's kind of a zoomed in picture so you can start to see where we were highlighting, and then kind of some of this detail on that main road. So actually going all the way out to here, and then even back into here. And if we look at the road system, that's actually pretty well developed down here on the south side, and you can see that's pretty much there, and then this green area kind of being the connection point between north and south of the island. And this kind of separates everything out, so you can see just the highway situation. And then it actually shows kind of quite a lot of complexity right here in the middle here, right? When, of course, this is the main part of the island where we have most of the people. But you can definitely see these new areas, roads heading all the way out to this point here. And then kind of a new area right in here, right? And then this whole piece of the puzzle right here. So, and then maybe a middle piece right in here. So that kind of showing major road systems just on a map. And then you can zoom in and see some of this just Port of Spain. This is helpful for the industrial district, so you can kind of see where some of the industry is, and that kind of goes out through here. And then you can kind of see there's kind of this front level here, and then a middle point in through here, and then definitely some stuff coming on out through here, and then kind of around the backside, Port of Spain, as well as this kind of region right in here, and then maybe another market out that way. Now, I really love this map because it showed this whole road going all the way around the edge, so you can kind of see this pathway here being super important to kind of the hills and getting outside of town, as well as this whole region here. You can kind of see that where the road kind of stops here in terms of high quality road, but also showing you kind of that downtown region, so you can kind of see this road being pretty difficult here, and then this road being pretty difficult here, and then kind of this one kind of coming off the front end, as well as this back section here. So a lot of this would be pretty familiar if you lived in Port of Spain, trying to get in and out of the town. Some of these backups would be pretty typical. This is typical traffic flow, so you can kind of see out towards the hospital, another area there. But you can do this for the whole entire island and kind of see Google has quite a lot of access to people's cell phones, so you can kind of see some of these interesting areas on the traffic side. I can definitely get you caught up on traffic here. So this is some of the most interesting geology in the world, actually, in the Caribbean. I really think that particularly this whole crevice right in here, and then when you start talking about Dominican Republic and Haiti, and then you get out to Puerto Rico, all that kind of spins into this weird area that goes just north of Trinidad and Tobago. And so this actually comes in through here, and you have a split where Trinidad and Tobago kind of has its own geology off to the side that actually really connects to this whole mountain range here. So there's like two splits in the mountain range. That Lake Maracaibo here, you see Maracaibo and Venezuela, there's this huge lake, and this kind of heads down into the Andes. But you have a special kind of area with this pink dirt kind of coming up through here on Trinidad and Tobago. Kind of similar to the split that you have here in Cancun and heading out into Cuba, right? So you have this Cuba split here, and then kind of coming in from Belize through Jamaica and Haiti and Dominican Republic, and kind of combining together. So really interesting, and kind of giving you a really start of an understanding of what's going on with the geology in this region. So oil has been a big part of Venezuela, and actually all throughout the Caribbean. There is a lot of different islands here, and some of them work entirely their budgets off of oil and energy. So it wouldn't be surprising to see that some of these geology maps can be pretty helpful. But this one kind of gives you an overview for the island as you detail and zoom in. And this one really helped me understand basically the comparison between the main part of the island. So you basically have Trinidad and Tobago, and then you have these little pieces of the puzzle that kind of come together here. So you got this little guy here, and then you got this bridge between this city and here, and then you kind of come up through here, and you can see that Trinidad and Tobago may have a lot in common with some of these other islands along the coast of Venezuela. And so you really have to put the pieces of the puzzle together here to kind of see how all these different cities kind of build into Caracas. And we'll do that. We'll zoom out a little bit more here so you can see this is Caracas right here, and you can see that's pretty much what happened here, is that they wanted to live up in the mountains because it's a little bit cooler. Remember, you're right along the equator, so the temperature is actually colder up in the hills here. And then this being a big piece of the puzzle for what's going on in this whole region, as well as looking at how this fits in. And it's hard to see this on this map. Let me see if I can go back to the other map and look at the population map here. Where did we get that one? Yeah, so if we zoom out on this map, the other part of the population key is coming in through all these smaller islands. So basically, Trinidad and Tobago, the actual architecture is through here and Venezuela, and as we saw on the geological map, it's kind of a separate little rift on the geology, and that does definitely affect the culture. So you can see it's all Spanish throughout here, and then for some reason English on Trinidad and Tobago. So that's an important part of history. Definitely we should look into. But if I zoom out all the way into the Caribbean, it's a little bit hard to see this map. It's kind of zooming a little bit slowly here, but hopefully we'll get some of this so you can see kind of that population. If I change the map on white map, you can kind of see some of that population a little bit easier here on this map. So this shows definitely Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, but this is definitely a big population source for all these Windward Islands. So in some ways, Puerto Rico is on one side of this, Trinidad and Tobago is on the other side, and if you combine the cultures of both, and Puerto Rico being part of the United States, essentially, and that kind of really starts to answer some interesting questions about what's going on these Windward Islands. You also have the United States Virgin Islands right next to Puerto Rico, British Virgin Islands, and then some other weird islands that you definitely should take a look at if you're looking into this. But this is a pretty good population map for the entire Caribbean. So let's really zoom in and look at that population, right? So some of the areas that might be surprising here. So basically, this is no surprise. We kind of looked at this, but we do see kind of a little spot right in here, and then kind of another spot here, and then even some spots kind of going along the south coast, right? And then you see kind of a population center there, one on the windward side, and then maybe even this here, as well as some new population coming along here, and then there's this whole coast, some other areas. Now this can be quite difficult, many hours to get across the whole entire island, so you basically have to be careful that you are close to Port of Spain, because that's where the airport is, up in that region there. So but this kind of shows some interesting characteristics of the population of the island, so you might want to just pause this video, kind of compare this with the street maps and look at the population as well. This is one of my favorite maps just because it shows this mountain range. Now remember, we kind of had a split between Trinidad and Tobago, but it actually has a separate mountain range right there, and then this one kind of comes in through here, but then it kind of goes off to this almost second side here. So it's important to realize that this half here is actually going to this half here, whereas this half here is kind of going to this half down here on the south side of Lake Maracaibo. It is interesting to think about this. So for example, you might be more Brazilian on this side, and then this might be more Spanish on these sides, and this is actually English and also Portuguese, as well as French. You have some other languages there on some of these islands. So, but it's really beautiful just to look at this map, and you can kind of see some of the other weird characteristics of these mountain ranges. Even heading into Central America, you kind of see this separation between Mexico and the rest of Central America based on those mountain ranges. So it might give you a new kind of interpretation of what's going on, as well as how flat Trinidad and Tobago is, kind of like almost like Cuba actually. So that's kind of an interesting point, just looking at the similarity between Cuba and here's a real zoomed in picture, so you can kind of see some new details on the island that maybe weren't visible. So you kind of have this half here, a slight little mountain range here, and then a third mountain range kind of going on the side here, and then Tobago, you can kind of see that's mostly on the north side. So the population basically lives down here, but this could be actually more dangerous because of hurricanes. Because they do slide in through here. It's just so flat, and you have to be careful about that. Which is another reason some people may want to live up in the hills. We saw that population range in there, and then you can also see this whole kind of sharp area heading out in this weird mountain range that heads into the jungle. That means a lot more biodiversity because you have those mountains there as well. And this is another topological map. It doesn't really show the same. It really shows all of Trinidad being quite flat relative to these pieces of the puzzle right in here and right in here, right? And this is important to realize that there is these kind of like little islands, Aruba, that you see in here, and then kind of this connection through here, as well as like there, and then heading around that way. So you see there's kind of a split there where just like you have here on this side with Cuba, and you have kind of a range here heading off into these islands, and then connecting back up kind of on the Dominican Republic side and the Puerto Rico side. And there's actually so many earthquakes. If we are to look at the earthquakes, you're going to see tons of earthquakes because this is kind of all rifting together on that map. And here we can kind of see some of that mountain range here, and it really shows almost invisible on this side, with even a kind of a separate divot right there. And then this kind of shows some cool stuff here on this. You can see kind of a split here, as well as something heading out really major there. And then this heading out to Caracas and the Venezuelan mountain range that most people are familiar with in the region. Alright, so this is the dirt map. You might find this kind of surprising because we see some of the characteristics that we see on the geological mountain map on the dirt map. So you can kind of see this orange dirt is actually quite good for farming. I'm going to highlight that there. And then you got some of this. This is actually just from the population area right here. That's all floodplain, so that's important to look at as well. And this is another version of a dirt map, and it shows kind of 3 different sides, or maybe 4, so you can see this. I won't even circle it on this, but I'll just keep it like this so you can see. And this all being similar to this, and this is all floodplain down here, so you can see a lot of that being floodplain. Similar to what this is here, so you may actually be very careful about living on this south side of the island, just because if the hurricane comes in, or even visiting, could also be dangerous. And then here's a zoomed in picture of that, and you can kind of see a third part of that dirt, and this little orange spots, or the purple spots being actual population or heavy population. So it's so heavy that they decided to put different colored dirt there because it's probably cement. And this is actually probably the most detailed population map that we're going to look at for the whole entire island. You can probably go into great detail on this, but I'm going to just circle the whole island to start with, because the main point of this is kind of looking at the trail, and this I would say actually comes into the center of the island, and not really Port of Spain here, and then here you can kind of see this guy going in like that, and then there's this whole huge blob of people here, but interestingly enough it kind of comes in through here, and then comes back through here, and then there's a split right in here along the coastline. So a lot of people, when they get to here, some of them go into the jungle deeper, and then there's another spot here where people are actually going into the jungle more versus staying along the coastline. And there's definitely some details here that we can look at in terms of how this piece of the population basically results in this whole island being fairly heavily populated. I'm not sure if we got Caracas on this, but you can see there's some other kind of jungle people heading out into here, and then there's this whole kind of sparsy area here, but all that basically being part of what ended up to be Trinidad and Tobago, and it's really surprising that's English speaking, so likely that some of this other stuff is actually differences in language, with Spanish and even French being tied into this as well. And this time we're going to actually diagram out the population a little bit more detailed. And you can see the Port of Spain is actually quite exotic here. And you actually have kind of some weird other areas connected that you might not have anticipated being the way that they are. So I'm going to do this a little bit different than how we did this before, just to kind of give it a different perspective on this whole population. And I'm really sorry about the south side of this island. It should probably be diagrammed very differently, but you can kind of see that this I wanted to kind of do it as big groups as possible, and you can kind of see there's some other population areas out in here, and even a little spot right there, but that should cover most everybody on the island, and you can kind of see how it all interconnects. I would even zoom in even further on this. If you really are interested in visiting the island, you can definitely see how each area is interconnected, particularly around the Port of Spain, and right in this middle region that definitely has a lot of details to study on that. And then being an island, definitely the shipping lines would be very valuable to look at. And I would say there's actually probably even 3 different sections here. I'm going to do this in green, but you can see right here, on the Port of Spain, and then there's actually another little spot right here, and maybe even a fourth section, right on this side of the island. So maybe this is more fishing, and you can actually see that some of these towns, excuse me, woo, sorry, maybe a little sick today, but you got this little point here, as well as this point here. So these little towns here may actually have quite a lot of traffic between Trinidad and Tobago. I definitely anticipate these four cities. And then you can also see right in here, this guy here actually being pretty busy on this line here, going right out to the Port of Spain. So that's looks like a direct connection. And then maybe even going out to Caracas from that point. So that's pretty interesting to see some of these shipping lines on this map. Next, we want to kind of look at the Earth at night, and this shows all the way to Caracas. This should definitely be diagrammed out. I'm going to try to diagram this pretty fast in green, but you can basically see that the power lines basically come through here, and then there's basically there's this whole coastal line. So actually this, and then there's a huge amount of light coming from this whole area. So definitely this whole stuff being very important, and then kind of going off on here all the way to Caracas. So Caracas being a huge city, and definitely it just looks like Trinidad is much more advanced in terms of light. You can see for most of the area except for right in here. So there's a lot of light coming from here, and this would be really interesting to find out if this is a mistake on the map or what's going on exactly. So but basically Trinidad and Tobago, and then you can see Barbados also being very well lit, and you'll see many of these other islands being very well lit as a percentage of the island. So actually pretty advanced economies along the coastline there. And then this shows some interesting population characteristics, but I would say really what we'd want to do is take a look at what's going on in Caracas and kind of see how that relates to some of these other beach towns. And here, this kind of explains more detail, less detail, but it shows better about how actually the population gets over to Trinidad and Tobago. And you can see this actually being on the south side and even southeast side of the island, which is actually very much worries me because of the hurricanes coming in through here. But this is a pretty good map overall to compare, so you can see how this Caracas population and other coastal areas along the north side of South America make it over to Trinidad and Tobago. And the weather map we should look at pretty carefully to compare it basically to some of the other areas that you may be familiar with. Miami is pretty familiar with that. And then most of the coast of the east coast of Central America, has similar kind of characteristics. And that's because the wind comes in here and you basically have a lot of rain and other things that happen along the east coast side. This is the windward side, and you can see that happens pretty much everywhere, except for in Haiti. There's a lot of rain actually on both sides of the island, maybe even more so on the west side, but basically most of this happens on the east, and you can see that's also true on the South American part here. But basically this blocks a lot of the hurricanes that come in across the Atlantic. Okay, so I hope you really enjoyed the study of basically Trinidad and Tobago. There's certainly a lot to look at. One thing I was thinking as I was taking a break is definitely take a look at this Wikimapia. We didn't really get into some of the street views. I did do a lot of street views before. It just takes a lot of time to go in and do street views, but you might want to do some of these industrial areas and some street views all around downtown, and just take a look at that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the study, and let me know if you got any questions about Trinidad and Tobago. I have a bunch of friends there now, so I'm trying